Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of Careers in Coffee. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be welcoming Dr. Kirsty Culley, Associate Director of Science Engagement at Norwich Research Park. Talk to us a little bit more about her fantastic career in science and just get an insight into her world over the last 12 months of everything that's been going on. So let's welcome Kirsty.
Hi, Jordan.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to come along.
It is a pleasure. Now, first question. Do we have coffee or hot beverage to hand?
Cup of tea.
This is what we like. We like organised guests. This is crucial. This is good. Awesome. Now, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so as you said, my name's Kirsty Culley. So my background is as a scientist. So I'm really interested in human disease. Is my particular background. I'm from Norfolk, so I did study here. I did my bachelor's and PhD in Norfolk at the UEA. And then I went off to New York City, actually, after I finished my PhD to study science there. And while I was there, I really realised I enjoyed working in multidisciplinary teams. So with engineers and doctors and things like that. And I really liked collaborating. So when I came back to the UK, I came back to the Norwich Research Park, which is world leading in science. So I get to move back to my home county and do and work with world leading scientists. So that's what I'm doing now in the science engagement field.
That's a fantastic introduction. Thank you. And did you always know that you wanted to go off and be a scientist at school? What was the thing that triggered it for you?
Absolutely not. I would like to pretend that my career has been something that I've really carefully orchestrated. But no, I was really lucky that when I was at Acre High School, which is now renamed, that shows how long ago I went to high school, I was really lucky that I had fantastic science teachers, and two of them happened to be women. So I just took that for granted that women could do science. And at the time, Acre was really a leader in science education. So I really enjoyed it, but I also really enjoyed English and arts. So I went on to East Norfolk Sixth Form College. And I did a real mixture of A-levels because I had no idea what I wanted to focus on. But one of them happened to be biology.
Wow, blimey, that sounds fantastic. And tell us a little bit. So you did your master's, PhD, and then went off to New York. What was that like? Was there a reason? What led you there?
So because I'd done my bachelor's and PhD at the UEA, which I absolutely loved. And I was really lucky because my PhD supervisor was amazing, Ian Clark at the UEA, who studies arthritis, if anyone wants to look him up. I was really lucky. I had a really supportive team. And while I was there, I thought, what am I going to do next? And I was very lucky that Ian happened to know a professor in New York. And it's when President Obama was in the White House and he really supported science and put loads of funding into scientific research. And the professor over there, Mary Goldring, happened to have a grant that she'd got successfully. So she had room for a postdoc. So a postdoctoral position is something you do after your PhD. And I met her at a conference, and she actually said she hired me because I seemed like fun, but I'm sure it was also because I'm very good at science. So, and I was just kind of ready to fly away to somewhere new and learn some new things from different cultures and different backgrounds. So in New York, it's not just Americans, there's a whole big mixing pot of all different cultures and backgrounds, and it was just amazing to be there. Yeah, so I spent 8 years over there, so I can do a cracking New York accent if you need.
That sounds fantastic, thank you. And we just got a question in. So what other subjects did you enjoy at school?
Art. I absolutely loved art. So I was lucky at high school as well to have a really good art teacher, and English literature. So I actually went on to do my A-levels in English literature, biology and fine art. And then I also did chemistry, but I was terrible at chemistry.
Brilliant, thank you. And what has the last 12 months as a scientist been like for you with everything that's been going on in the world?
It's been really, really challenging. I feel immensely lucky to have been at the Norwich Research Park. I don't know if you know that much about the park, Jordan, but we've got 6 partners. So we've got the university, the John Innes Centre, the Sainsbury's Laboratory, the hospital, the Quadram Institute, and I think the Earlham Institute. I think that was all 6. I might have missed one. but we really came together, all the scientists there and also all the admin staff, the research technicians, just everybody in every kind of career, to try and do our best for our region and for the UK for the fight against COVID. So in my role, I'm not actually at the bench anymore, so I help facilitate collaboration and connections amongst our scientists and different colleagues across the park. I actually got seconded out of my role to work at the UEA on their asymptomatic COVID testing project. So I was there helping to get all the students tests to make sure that we didn't have asymptomatic spread of COVID across the population and into Norwich. So that was really fantastic to work with my colleagues to ramp up that project so quickly. And I feel like we've made a real impact. And then obviously all my colleagues at the hospital on the front line, you know, it's very impressive what everybody did and continues to do even now, because we're not through it yet.
I think it's amazing, and I had my vaccine last weekend, and you do feel a huge sense of just how amazing science is. And I feel like over the last 12 months, I think science has come to the forefront for a lot of people, and understanding what it means and seeing it firsthand, whether you've had your jab or not. And to see those advancements in such a quick sort of turnaround is amazing. Do you feel that more young people or folks will start to maybe look at this as a sector, as a potential career, based on everything the last 12 months has given us?
I really hope so. The reason I went into science engagement is because I really want others who aren't scientists, like honestly, I'm no smarter than anybody else. My mum and dad will vouch for that. You know, it's just something that I've really dedicated myself to and work hard to understand. So anybody can do science, but I really want everybody in the general public to feel like they can engage with science, find out what's important to them, so that, you know, as scientists, we need to know what's important to people, and we also need them to support us in the work that we do. Because there is a lot of things in the news now about anti-vaccinations and things like that. You know, if as scientists we don't communicate with the public effectively about what we're doing, of course they're going to be confused or scared about what's going on. And so we definitely need more people in those roles, as well as at the bench doing science. So I hope it's really inspired some people to look at it as a potential career, because it is absolutely fantastic. I love science. I'm a real nerd through and through.
That's great, thank you. We've just got another question. So, do you have to be a scientist to work at Norwich Research Park?
Absolutely not. So we've got, I can't remember how many people work there, but thousands. And we're all in different roles. So you get all the way to the directors of all those institutes that I mentioned who have scientific backgrounds, to people like me working in science engagement, who can have all different kinds of backgrounds as well. People working in communications to help spread the news about what kind of research we're doing, public affairs, so people working with government, again, to help get support for our science, and admin roles to make sure that we can do the jobs that we do, facilities management, catering. There's literally, I think our CEO, David Parfrey, says we have every career other than astronaut. So no, you can definitely do other things other than be a scientist at the park.
That sounds brilliant. And yeah, what sort of skills do you have to use day to day in your role?
I think in my role now, obviously I use my scientific background sometimes on certain projects, but collaboration, so having good collaborative skills, good communication skills, so you're good at talking to people. I think that's a real skill of mine, that I don't just talk in science language. I can make sure that I can use language where everybody can engage with the science. And I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we forget science itself is like a whole other language sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And we just got another question. So why do you feel it's important to challenge stereotypes in STEM, and have you had to overcome any barriers yourself?
I think it's very important to challenge the stereotypes in STEM. Many times, I think, because I look a little bit younger as well. Well, I don't know if I do any more after the year that I've had, but I look a bit younger than what I am. And sometimes when I was working in the States, people would ask me what I do, and I'd say, oh, I'm a scientist. And they'd be like, oh, you're a scientist. And I know that's because I was a woman and looked younger. And there aren't enough women in STEM, and there aren't enough people of minorities. So that's why I love working with people like the Youth STEM Award and Sam Fox, who runs that. Who've got programs to really encourage people from all diverse backgrounds and women to get into science. And you do face challenges. I worked where I worked in the States. I worked with a lot of orthopedic surgeons who it was a very male-dominated field. But once you come across confident and you know what you're doing and you're proud of what you're doing, people usually respect you and listen to your ideas.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned their Youth STEM Awards. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Youth STEM Awards, I don't know if you've heard of the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, Jordan, but it's basically the same thing, but for STEM. And so Sam Fox was a scientist at the John Innes Centre. So Sam started as a technician and went on to finish her PhD just recently. And her partner have created the Youth STEM Awards. So it's a way for students to really engage with STEM activities. And the more points you get from engaging in different activities, you get different medals. And also, really great things for your CV for when you want to apply to college or university. And they have really great programs that they're linked in with all kinds of science stuff all over the county and across the world, really. So get following Youth STEM Awards on Twitter and you can see what they're up to.
Brilliant, thank you, Kirsty. And we just got another question in. So which scientific discovery do you wish you had made?
Oh my goodness. The COVID vaccine, probably. It would have been great to work on that. Absolutely great. Oh, so many. I mean, in the arthritis field, which is where I predominantly worked, so many treatments now that have come along. And the gene sequencing is something that I'm really passionate about. So anything like that.
Brilliant.
Anything that won a Nobel Prize, I would have loved to have been involved.
And we just got another question here. So what's been one of your favourite projects in science that you've worked on?
Oh my goodness, I don't know, I've worked on so many. One that was really fun to work on at the UEA is that we were looking at different food compounds that could help prevent the breakdown of your cartilage. So cartilage is the tissue that caps your bones, so it allows your joints to move really easily. So we did use a lot of compounds from broccoli and garlic, so the fridge in the lab used to really stink. That was a fun project to work on. And we did find actually that one compound in broccoli could prevent your cartilage from breaking down. And at the park we've developed a super broccoli that has a higher amount of that compound, and one of the people from my lab is running a food trial on that, so feeding people with arthritis that broccoli soup to see if it can alleviate pain. So that's a cool project.
That sounds brilliant.
So eat your broccoli, Jordan.
Great big and strong. And yeah, you talked there about arthritis. Why did you choose that as your specialism?
It's a little bit of a fluke and not. So I studied molecular biology during my bachelor's degree, which is all about DNA and how DNA and your genes can either mean you're more likely to develop a disease or cause a disease to progress more quickly. And during that, I learned about a group of genes that result in proteins being expressed called metalloproteinases, which are like scissors. And they're the things that can cut tissues, so they're responsible for the breakdown of cartilage in arthritis, but also are involved in cancer and all kinds of diseases. And my professor who taught those lectures just happened to email out everybody in that class to say he had a PhD available. And I thought, well, I really like Ian, he's a great teacher, and it's an area that I find really interesting. And I just went for the interview and hoped that he'd like me. And thankfully, yeah, they hired me. But also my family has really bad genetics for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid. So it also meant that I had a passion for it because I could see how it really affected my grandma.
That sounds brilliant. Thank you. And for any young people who are watching or who will watch, what's your advice for them in terms of getting into a similar pathway that you've done yourself?
Well, one thing my professor said is that everything that he'd done was always luck. But I do think it also has something to do with just use your connections. As you're younger, really keep your mind open and think about what you want to do. Speak to people who do careers that you think you might be interested in, just to get the real insight, because some things look more glamorous on the outside than what they are on the inside. But if you're interested in science, things like the Youth STEM Awards or any other, we've got the Norwich Science Festival. There's so many ways to engage with science in Norfolk. So, do try and take up the opportunities there. And then we've got fantastic colleges and universities on our doorstep. So always a great way in, or there's always people there to chat to about what potential path you want to go into.
Great, advice, thank you. And another question. So do you have to get a degree to work in science?
No, you don't. You can access science in all different ways, and people from all different backgrounds can work on science. So I work with technicians in the lab who really, were masterminds, and they didn't have degrees, but they were interested. Perhaps they'd done some A-levels in science, and then they weren't sure about what to do for the next step. So they came in as a technician, and they'd either progress through the different technician levels, so you can become more of a senior technician and take on more and more responsibilities, to a point where you might be running a project yourself. To be honest, technicians make the world go round in the lab. But no, you can do all different things, apprenticeships, all different levels of entry to science.
Brilliant. And have you got any interesting projects that are upcoming over at Norwich Research Park?
Oh my goodness, we've got millions of amazing projects. So we've got great things going on at the moment in terms of the fight against COVID. So people at the UEA looking at the real social impacts or economic impacts. We have Justin O'Grady at the Quadrum Institute, who is now the Deputy Director for COG UK. So COG UK is the programme that we have for sequencing variants of COVID. So Justin and his team are tracking all the different variants, the new Indian variant that's happening in the UK, so that's ongoing. There's also a number of trials. If people are interested in getting and entering into a trial, the Quadrum Institute have different trials you can do to, at the moment, probably not suited for your audience because they're about pregnancy and dementia and those kind of things. But keep your eye on the Quadrum website for those, because there are ways to engage with science that way. And as scientists, we're always appreciative if people enter trials for us.
Good stuff, thank you. And another question. So if I'm taking my A-levels, do I need to take all three sciences, or can I swap out my weakest for a different subject?
Well, as I said, I did biology and chemistry. So I didn't do physics, and I wasn't very good at chemistry at all. So no, have a think about what you want to do for your next step. If you want to go to a university, have a look at the courses and see what their requirements are. But no, for me, my biology A-level was enough for me to go to the UEA, along with, the UCAS points that I got from my other A-levels. So yeah, just have a think about the next step and what you might need. But no, you don't need to do all of them.
Excellent, thank you. And I think probably final questions, I can see the time's creeping up, but what advice would you give to Kirsty back at school, sort of 15-year-old, in terms of sort of setting up for the future?
I would say talk to people more, keep your mind open. From my family, I was one of the first people to go to university. My sister's actually a nurse, so she was doing an apprenticeship that went on to do her degree. So it wasn't something that kind of was natural for me to go to university. So I would say just keep your mind open to the different possibilities, because the possibilities are endless. There's careers in every single field. So keep your mind open, talk to people about their careers, and be confident, because if you work hard, you can do anything you want to do.
Brilliant.
Within reason.
A last question for you, and you touched on it earlier in terms of people perhaps anti-vaxxers, etc. What advice would you give to anybody who's maybe a little bit nervous about getting that vaccine?
I would say really look at trustworthy sources. So like the Royal Society of Biology are a fantastic source for information. The NHS websites are an amazing source of information. And I think what always brings me comfort is, because I know scientists, the majority of scientists who work in academia in particular They do it because they want to find solutions to real world issues. They want to do it to make the world a better place. They're not just doing it, for fun. And for me, I cannot wait to get my vaccine. So I would really encourage you to read the information, read it from a really trustworthy source. If you're afraid, talk to your GP to get more safe information. And let's get vaccinated so we can go out and enjoy life again.
Good advice, and what a perfect thing to end on. Kirsty, thank you so much for joining us on Careers and Coffee. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Jordan. Pleasure to speak to you.
Thanks. So folks, that was Dr. Kirsty Culley talking to us a little bit more about her fantastic career in science, pathways into it, whether you want to follow that on a degree, and also that you can work in that field and not necessarily have to be a scientist. So absolutely brilliant to speak to her today. So folks, that's the end of Careers and Coffee for this week. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks.